The wave crashed against Hank Turner's back as he lunged forward, his strong arms cutting through the churning water toward the woman being dragged out to sea. He could hear his 8-year-old daughter Lily screaming from the shore, but he couldn't turn back now. "Hold on." He shouted over the roar of the ocean. "I'm coming." The woman's terrified eyes locked with his as another wave pushed her further into the rip current. Her blonde hair splayed across the water like seaweed, arms flailing desperately as she fought against the powerful pull. Hank had seen enough drownings during his years living near Sunset Beach to recognize the signs. The beach wasn't as fancy as the private ones up north, but it was where he brought Lily every weekend. Being a single father working as a carpenter meant their entertainment options were limited, but the ocean was free and usually safe if you knew its moods. Today, the water had turned angry without warning. "Dad," Lily's voice carried faintly across the distance. "Stay put." He yelled back, hoping she'd hear him. Lily was smart enough to stay on shore, but it broke his heart knowing she was watching, terrified. The woman disappeared under the surface just as Hank reached the spot where she'd been. He dove beneath the waves, salt stinging his eyes as he searched the murky water. His lungs burned, but then he caught a flash of her white swimsuit. With powerful kicks, he propelled himself deeper, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward him. She was limp when he wrapped his arm around her chest, but he could feel her heart beating against his forearm as he kicked toward the surface. Breaking through, he gasped for air, turning the woman's face upward. "Breathe." He commanded, treading water as he positioned them both to ride the current. "I've got you, don't fight it." Her eyes fluttered open, startling green against her pale face. She coughed violently, expelling seawater. "We're going to ride this out," Hank explained, his voice steady despite his racing pulse. "The current's too strong to fight directly. We'll swim parallel to shore until we're clear, then head in. Just stay with me." She nodded weakly, clutching his shoulder with trembling fingers. The next 15 minutes were a blur of calculated swimming, strategic drifting, and constant reassurance. Finally, they felt the rip current's grip loosen. Hank angled them toward shore, his muscles screaming from the exertion. When their feet finally touched sand, Hank supported the woman as they stumbled through the shallows. A small crowd had gathered, including a tearful Lily who rushed forward the moment they were clear of the water. "Dad," she cried, wrapping her arms around his wet waist. "I'm okay, Lillipad," he assured her, using his free arm to hug her while still supporting the woman. Someone had called emergency services. A lifeguard jogged toward them, followed by paramedics carrying equipment across the sand. "You need to sit down," Hank told the woman, helping her onto the sand. "They'll want to check you out." She nodded, still catching her breath. "You saved my life," she managed between coughs. Hank shrugged. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said, her green eyes intense despite her exhaustion. "They wouldn't have." The paramedics reached them, and Hank stepped back, pulling Lily close as they began examining the woman. He gathered their beach towels and packed up their modest cooler, suddenly aware of how his old swim trunks and Lily's hand-me-down swimsuit stood in contrast to the woman's designer white one-piece. "Sir," one of the paramedics approached. "The patient would like to thank you before we take her to get checked out." Hank hesitated, then nodded, taking Lily's hand as they walked over. The woman was sitting on a stretcher now, a blanket around her shoulders. Up close, Hank could see she was probably in her early 30s, around his own age. Despite having nearly drowned, she was strikingly beautiful, with high cheekbones and that remarkable blonde hair now plastered to her head. "I didn't get a chance to thank you properly," she said, her voice stronger now. "I'm Eleanor Nelson." "Hank Turner," he replied, then gestured to his daughter. "This is Lily." Eleanor's face softened as she looked at the little girl. "Your dad is very brave, Lily." Lily nodded solemnly. "He says the ocean demands respect. That lady over there said you were swimming where the signs say not to." She pointed to a local woman who had been watching from her beach chair all morning. Eleanor looked embarrassed. "I didn't notice the signs. I'm not familiar with this beach." "We come here every Saturday," Lily informed her proudly. "Dad knows all the safe spots." "I can tell," Eleanor smiled, then turned to Hank. "Please, I'd like to thank you properly. Perhaps I could, no thanks necessary." Hank interrupted, uncomfortable with the idea of accepting anything. Just glad you're okay. But I insist, madam, we really should get you to the hospital, the paramedic interrupted. Standard procedure for near drownings. Eleanor looked frustrated but nodded. Will you at least tell me how to contact you? Hank hesitated, then reluctantly recited his cell number, which Eleanor quickly entered into her phone before being wheeled away. Is the pretty lady going to be okay? Lily asked as they watched the ambulance pull away. She'll be fine, Hank assured her, squeezing her small hand. Let's go home. I think we've had enough excitement for one day. As they walked toward their old pickup truck parked in the free lot, Hank couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Something beyond just saving a stranger's life. He was right. 3 days later, Hank was at work, installing cabinets in a renovation project when his phone buzzed. He didn't recognize the number but answered anyway, wiping sawdust from his hands. Hello, Hank Turner speaking. Mr. Turner, this is Eleanor Nelson. The woman you pulled from the ocean on Saturday. Hank leaned against the half-finished counter. Miss Nelson, how are you feeling? Much better, thanks to you. Her voice was warm and confident, vastly different from the terrified woman he'd rescued. I was hoping I might take you and your daughter to dinner as a thank you. Hank ran a hand through his hair. That's really not necessary, please, I insist. It would mean a lot to me. After a moment's hesitation, Hank agreed, partly because he sensed she wouldn't take no for an answer, and partly because Lily would enjoy a dinner out, something they rarely could afford. They agreed to meet the following evening at a family restaurant in town. When Hank hung up, he found himself inexplicably nervous. It wasn't a date he hadn't dated since his wife left him and Lily 4 years ago. This was just a thank-you dinner from someone grateful to be alive. Still, he spent extra time that evening pressing his one decent button-up shirt and helping Lily pick out her favorite dress. Do I look pretty, Dad? She asked, twirling in her blue sundress, her dark hair twisted into what he hoped resembled a neat braid. The prettiest, he assured her, though he worried about the visible patch he'd sewn onto the hem last month when she'd caught it on a nail. They arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early. Hank had expected something casual, but Walker's was one of the nicer establishments in town, not somewhere he'd ever taken Lily before. Dad, look, Lily pointed excitedly as a sleek white Range Rover pulled into the lot. That's a fancy car like in the movies. Hank's suspicions were confirmed when Eleanor stepped out, looking nothing like the bedraggled woman he'd pulled from the ocean. She wore a simple emerald dress that matched her eyes, her blonde hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She smiled when she spotted them waiting outside. Hank, Lily, I'm so glad you could come, she greeted them warmly, bending slightly to meet Lily at eye level. You look beautiful in that dress, Lily beamed. Thank you, Dad braided my hair. Eleanor glanced up at Hank, a hint of amusement in her eyes. He did a fine job. Hank felt heat creep up his neck. I'm better with hammers than hair. It's charming, Eleanor assured him, straightening up. Shall we? Inside, they were immediately shown to a table by a window overlooking the harbor. Hank noticed how the staff seemed to recognize Eleanor, treating her with particular deference. After they ordered, Hank carefully selecting one of the more reasonably priced items, despite Eleanor's insistence, they order whatever they wanted. An awkward silence fell. So, Hank finally said, you're not from around here, Eleanor shook her head. I live in Boston most of the year. I was just down for a weekend to look at some property. Property, Lily chimed in, coloring on her kids' menu. Yes, I develop boutique hotels, Eleanor explained. My company is considering building one along this coastline. Hank raised his eyebrows. Your company? Eleanor took a sip of water. Nelson Hospitality Group. I'm the CEO and majority owner. Hank nearly choked on his bread. He'd heard of Nelson Hospitality, everyone on the coast had. They owned some of the most exclusive resorts in New England. You're that Nelson? He asked, suddenly feeling even more out of place in his pressed but worn shirt. Eleanor nodded, somewhat uncomfortably. Does that change things? Before Hank could answer, Lily piped up. What's a CEO? Eleanor smiled at the girl. It means I'm the boss of the company. Like Dad is the boss of our house, Lily nodded sagely. Something like that, Eleanor laughed, then turned back to Hank. I hope knowing what I do doesn't make this awkward. I just wanted to thank you properly. Hank forced himself to relax. No, it's fine, just surprising. I'm used to pulling tourists out of the water, not CEOs. Well, I'm grateful you didn't check my business credentials before diving in, she teased. The tension broken, dinner proceeded more comfortably. Eleanor asked Lily about school and her interests, showing genuine attention to the 8-year-old's detailed explanation of her science project on seashells. She asked Hank about his carpentry work with real curiosity, not the polite interest he'd expected. When dessert arrived, a massive ice cream sundae that made Lily's eyes widen, Hank found himself actually enjoying the evening. "Dad, can I go look at the fish tank?" Lily asked, pointing to an aquarium near the entrance after finishing her ice cream. "Stay where I can see you," Hank agreed, watching as she skipped away. Alone with Eleanor, Hank felt the need to address the obvious. "Look, I appreciate the dinner, but you really didn't have to do this." Eleanor studied him for a moment. "Has anyone ever told you that you're terrible at accepting gratitude?" Hank laughed despite himself. "My late mother might have mentioned it once or twice." Well, she was right. Eleanor leaned forward slightly. "Hank, you saved my life. A dinner is the absolute minimum I could do." "It's what anyone would have done." "No, it isn't," she said firmly. "I watched the beach afterwards. 3 people saw me struggling before you did. They just froze or backed away. You didn't hesitate with your daughter watching, no less." Hank shifted uncomfortably. "I knew what to do, that's all." Eleanor shook her head, a smile playing on her lips. "You're an interesting man, Hank Turner." "Not really," he countered. "Just a single dad trying to get by. And doing an excellent job from what I can see." She glanced over at Lily, who was pressing her nose against the aquarium glass. "She's wonderful. She's everything," Hank said simply. Eleanor's expression softened. "How long have you been raising her alone?" 4 years. Her mother decided family life wasn't for her when Lily was 4. He didn't add the details, how his ex-wife had left for someone with better prospects, someone who didn't work with his hands for a living. "That must be difficult," Hank shrugged. "We manage. Carpentry work is steady enough and we don't need much." Eleanor seemed about to say something else when Lily returned to the table, full of facts about the fish she'd observed. The moment passed, but Hank caught Eleanor watching him with a thoughtful expression for the rest of the evening. When they finally stepped outside after dinner, Hank fully expected to say goodbye for good. Instead, Eleanor surprised him. "I'm staying in town for another week to scout locations," she said. "Would it be okay if I called you again? Perhaps I could get a local's perspective on the area." Hank hesitated, sensing this was about more than real estate advice, but Lily answered for him. "Yes, Dad knows everything about the beach. He can show you all the safe places to swim," Eleanor laughed. "That would be very helpful." Hank found himself nodding. "Sure, just let me know when." As they parted ways, Hank couldn't help wondering what a woman like Eleanor Nelson could possibly want with a small-town carpenter and his daughter. But as he tucked Lily into bed that night, listening to her excited chatter about the hotel lady, he found himself hoping she would call again. She did. The next evening, in fact. "I hope I'm not bothering you," Eleanor said when he answered, "but I was wondering if you might be free this weekend to show me some of the coastline. Professionally, I mean," she added quickly. "For the hotel project." Hank glanced at Lily, who was watching cartoons on their small television. "I usually take Lily to the beach on Saturdays. She's welcome to join us, of course. I thought maybe we could make a day of it. I could bring a picnic." The idea of a picnic with this sophisticated woman seemed surreal, but Hank heard himself agreeing. Sure, that would be nice. Saturday dawned clear and perfect, the kind of early summer day that made the coastal town postcard worthy. Hank felt oddly nervous as he and Lily waited at the public beach parking lot where they'd arranged to meet. Eleanor arrived driving the same Range Rover, but dressed down in white linen pants and a light blue blouse, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. She looked younger, more approachable, though no less striking. "I brought food," she announced, lifting a wicker basket from her trunk. "Though I'm afraid I cheated and had the hotel restaurant prepare it. We brought drinks." Lily held up a small cooler proudly. "Dad made lemonade from real lemons." "That sounds perfect," Eleanor smiled. They spent the morning walking the shore, with Hank pointing out various landmarks and explaining the coastal geography. He showed Eleanor where the dangerous currents formed and why certain stretches of beach were safer than others. She listened attentively, occasionally making notes on her phone. "You really know this coastline," she observed as they spread a blanket for lunch. Hank handed Lily a sandwich. "I grew up here. My father was a fisherman. The ocean was our livelihood and our playground." "Is he still fishing?" Eleanor asked. "No, lost him to a heart attack 5 years back," Hank said quietly. "Mom followed a year later. They were always like that, couldn't be apart for long." Eleanor's face softened. "I'm sorry, they sound like they were wonderful people." "The best," Hank agreed. "They helped when Lily's mom left. I don't know what I would have done without them those first few months." As Lily wandered off to collect shells within sight, Eleanor turned to Hank. "Can I ask you something personal?" Hank nodded cautiously. "Are you happy here? With your life, I mean." The question caught him off guard. I don't think about it much. I've got Lily's steady work, a roof over our heads. That's enough." Eleanor studied him. "That's not what I asked." Hank sighed, looking out at the ocean. "Happiness is a luxury when you're focused on getting by, but yeah, I guess I am. Lily's happy and healthy. That makes me happy." "But what about you? Just you?" No one had asked him that in years. "I don't know," he admitted. "I used to have dreams of my own construction company someday, building houses instead of just fixing them. But that was before. Before you became a single father," Hank nodded. "Can't take risks with Lily depending on me." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "You know, I admire that. The sacrifice, but I don't think dreams and responsibility have to be mutually exclusive." "Easy to say when you have resources," Hank replied, then immediately regretted how it sounded. "I'm sorry, that was honest," Eleanor finished for him. "And fair. I won't pretend I understand the financial constraints you're under." She hesitated. "But I do understand sacrifice and responsibility. My father died when I was 22, leaving me a failing hotel business and mountains of debt." Hank raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Everyone told me to sell, take what I could get, and move on. Instead, I dropped out of my MBA program and took over. Worked 18-hour days for years to turn it around." She smiled faintly. "So while our circumstances are very different, I do understand putting dreams on hold." Hank studied her with newfound respect. "I wouldn't have guessed that I wasn't born into wealth," she laughed. "Most people don't. It's easier to assume I had everything handed to me." "Did you always want to run hotels?" Hank asked, genuinely curious now. Eleanor shook her head. "I wanted to be a marine biologist, actually. I love the ocean." She looked out at the waves. "Maybe that's why I was so determined to swim that day, despite the warnings. The sea has always called to me." "The ocean doesn't care how much money you have," Hank said. "It'll drag down anyone who doesn't respect it." "A lesson I won't forget," Eleanor agreed. "Thanks to you." They fell into a comfortable silence, watching Lily arrange her shell collection at the water's edge. "She's an extraordinary child," Eleanor observed. "She's my whole world," Hank said simply. Eleanor turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. "You're an extraordinary father, Hank." Something in her voice made his heart beat faster. Before he could respond, Lily came running back, proudly displaying a perfect sand dollar she'd found. The rest of the day passed pleasantly, with more beach exploration and even a stop for ice cream before heading back to the parking lot. As they prepared to part ways, Hank found himself reluctant to say goodbye. "Would you like to come to dinner tomorrow?" Eleanor asked suddenly. "At my rental cottage. It's nothing fancy, but I'm a decent cook." Hank hesitated, surprised by the invitation. "Please, Dad," Lily pleaded. "Eleanor promised to show me her seashell collection from around the world." "I did promise," Eleanor confirmed, a hopeful look in her eyes. "All right," Hank agreed. "We'd love to." The cottage turned out to be a stunning beachfront property that Hank knew rented for thousands per week during the summer. Eleanor greeted them at the door in jeans and a casual top, looking both elegant and approachable. "Welcome to my temporary home," she said, ushering them inside. "Lily, I've got those shells set up on the sun porch if you'd like to see them while I finish dinner." Lily needed no further encouragement, darting toward the indicated room while Hank followed Eleanor to the kitchen. The aroma of roasting chicken filled the air. "Can I help with anything?" he offered. You can open the wine, she suggested, nodding toward a bottle and corkscrew on the counter. Unless you'd prefer beer, I have that too. Wine is fine, Hank said, though he rarely drank either. He worked the corkscrew carefully, aware of Eleanor moving efficiently around the kitchen. So, have you found a good location for your hotel? He asked, successfully extracting the cork. Eleanor paused in her vegetable chopping. Actually, I've been reconsidering the project. Oh. She resumed chopping, not meeting his eyes. This town has a certain charm that a boutique hotel might disrupt. I'm thinking it might be better to focus on restoring some of the existing structures rather than building something new. Hank poured the wine into glasses she'd set out. That sounds like a good compromise, preservation with purpose. Exactly, Eleanor said, looking pleased. I've been looking at the old Sanderson boathouse at the marina. It's falling apart, but the bones are good. I know that building, Hank nodded. Beautiful craftsmanship underneath all that neglect. The joinery in those beams is something you don't see anymore. Eleanor's eyes lit up. Would you be interested in taking a look at it with me? Professionally, I mean. I could use someone with your expertise. I'd be happy to, Hank said, surprised by the offer. Though I should warn you, I'm just a residential carpenter. Commercial restoration is a different game. I trust your judgment, Eleanor said simply, then called Lily in for dinner. The meal was delicious and relaxed, with Lily dominating the conversation with excited descriptions of the shells Eleanor had shown her. After dinner, they moved to the deck overlooking the beach, where Lily eventually dozed off on a cushioned lounge chair. She's exhausted, Hank said fondly, draping his jacket over his sleeping daughter. It's been a big day for her, Eleanor agreed, handing Hank a fresh glass of wine as they settled into chairs near the rail. She told me all about her school and friends while looking at the shells. She seems very happy. I try my best, Hank said. It's not always easy on one income. You've done an amazing job, Eleanor said softly. I hope you know that. In the moonlight, with the sound of waves below them, Hank felt a connection to this woman that caught him off guard. Can I ask you something personal now? Eleanor nodded. Why are you really spending time with us? It can't just be gratitude for the rescue. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, looking out at the moonlit ocean. At first, it was gratitude. I truly believed I was going to die out there, Hank. When you grabbed me, it was. She shook her head. It was like being given a second chance. She turned to face him. But then I met you, really met you, and I was intrigued. You're different from the men I usually encounter. There's no pretense with you, no agenda. You're just authentic. Because I'm a simple carpenter, Hank asked, trying to keep the defensiveness from his voice. No, Eleanor said firmly. Because you're a good man who puts others before himself, who takes responsibility seriously, who knows what matters in life. That's surprisingly rare in any social circle. Hank felt warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the wine. I think you're giving me too much credit, and I think you don't give yourself enough, she countered, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. Hank, I've enjoyed these past few days more than any time I can remember. Being with you and Lily. She hesitated. It feels right, somehow. Hank set his glass down, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting. Eleanor, I should be honest, I can't offer you much. My life is complicated by single parenthood, limited finances, and a demanding job. Did I ask you to offer me anything? She challenged gently. No, but I'm just saying I enjoy your company, both of you, she glanced at Lily's sleeping form. And I'd like to see where this might go if you're willing. Hank studied her face, looking for signs of pity or condescension, but found only sincerity. I'm willing, he said finally, but I'm also cautious. Lily gets attached easily and I can't risk hurting her. Eleanor nodded. I understand, we can take things slowly. And there's the practical reality, Hank added. You live in Boston, your life is there, I'm here with roots I can't and won't uproot. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Eleanor suggested. For now, I'm here for at least another month working on this project. That gives us time to figure things out, one day at a time. As if to seal her words, she reached out and touched his hand. The contact sent a current through him that rivaled the ocean's pull. Over the next few weeks, Eleanor became a regular part of their lives. She joined them for weekend beach trips, helped Lily with a school project, and even attended one of Lily's softball games. Hank consulted on her boathouse renovation project, finding himself increasingly involved as her plans evolved. For her part, Eleanor seamlessly adapted to their modest lifestyle, never making Hank feel inadequate despite the obvious disparity in their financial situations. She seemed genuinely happy eating at the local diner or grilling hamburgers in Hank's small backyard. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, they sat on Hank's porch swing, listening to cicadas and distant waves. "I made an offer on the boathouse today," Eleanor said, her head resting on his shoulder. "That's great," Hank replied. "Old man Sanderson finally came down on his price." "Actually, I met his price," Eleanor admitted, "but I added a condition." Hank looked down at her. "What kind of condition?" "I want you to be the lead contractor on the renovation," she said, sitting up to face him. "Not just as a consultant, but running the whole project." "It would be a 6-month job at least." Hank stared at her. "Eleanor, I've never managed a project that size. But you could," she said confidently. "I've seen your work, talked to people in town about your reputation. Everyone says the same thing, you're the best craftsman on this coast, but you've never had the opportunity to prove it on a larger scale." "This feels like charity," Hank said uncomfortably. "It's not," Eleanor insisted. "It's smart business. I need someone who understands historical restoration and has local connections. You need a chance to showcase your abilities on a larger project. It's mutually beneficial." Hank was quiet, considering the implications. "What about my current jobs? I can't just abandon clients." "You could hire help," Eleanor suggested. "The boathouse contract would more than cover it." The possibility was tantalizing. This could be the break he'd been waiting for, the chance to build something beyond just scraping by. "What happens after the renovation?" he asked finally. "When you go back to Boston," Eleanor took his hand. "That's the other thing I wanted to talk about. I've been thinking about restructuring my company, opening a Southern New England division based here." Hank's eyes widened. "You'd move here. What about your life in Boston?" "My life is my company, a few close friends, and my cat," Eleanor said with a small smile. "The company can expand, friends can visit, and the cat would love the beach." She squeezed his hand. "The truth is, Hank, I've fallen in love with this place, and with you and Lily," she added softly. "These past weeks have shown me what I've been missing, a real connection, a sense of community, purpose beyond just business success." Hank felt his heart race. "Eleanor, I'm not asking for promises," she said quickly. "I know we're still getting to know each other. I'm just saying I can see a future here with my work and, hopefully, with you both in my life." Hank pulled her close, overwhelmed by her honesty and the possibilities she was offering. "I think I fell for you the moment you lectured me about accepting gratitude," he admitted with a laugh. "Nobody talks to me like that." "Someone should," she teased, leaning into his embrace. "You're an incredibly stubborn man." "Takes one to know one," he countered before kissing her gently. 6 months later, the Sanderson Boathouse reopened as the Maritime Heritage Center, with an upscale restaurant and boutique event space that immediately became the town's crown jewel. Eleanor's company received accolades for the historical preservation work, while Hank's craftsmanship was featured in several design magazines. With the profits from the project, Hank launched Turner Restoration, hiring 3 local carpenters and taking on increasingly prestigious projects throughout the region. Eleanor divided her time between Boston and the coast, gradually shifting more operations to her new southern office. 1 year to the day after the rescue, Hank took Eleanor back to the spot where they'd first met. Lily was spending the night with a friend, giving them a rare evening alone. "Hard to believe it's been a year," Eleanor said, watching the waves crash against the shore. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if you hadn't been here that day." "I try not to," Hank admitted, putting his arm around her, "but I'm grateful every day that I was." As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the water, Hank reached into his pocket. "I have something for you." Eleanor turned to him with curiosity as he pulled out a small wooden box. "What's this?" "Open it," he encouraged. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a ring with a simple diamond set in driftwood and silver. "I made the setting," Hank said quietly. "From a piece of driftwood we found on our first beach walk. The silver is from my mother's collection. She used to make jewelry as a hobby." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Hank, I know we come from different worlds, he said, taking her hand, and I know our life wouldn't be conventional. But this past year has shown me that some things are worth taking risks for. You've changed my life, Eleanor, not with your money or connections, but with your heart. He took the ring from the box. Will you marry me? Become part of our family officially? Yes, Eleanor whispered without hesitation. 1,000 times yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, she added with a smile, I think Lily's been waiting for you to ask longer than I have. Hank laughed. She helped me make the box, said it was taking me forever to propose. Smart girl, Eleanor said, pulling him close for a kiss as the waves crashed behind them, a reminder of where their journey had begun. 2 years later, Eleanor gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, who inherited their father's determination and their mother's green eyes. Lily, now 11, took her role as big sister with grave responsibility, teaching them about the ocean's power and beauty from their earliest days. The Turner Nelson family split their time between a modest but renovated beachfront home and occasional trips to Boston. Eleanor continued to expand her company's focus on historical restoration projects, while Hank's business flourished, becoming known for exceptional craftsmanship throughout New England. On summer evenings, they often returned to the beach where they first met, watching their children play at the water's edge under careful supervision. The rip current that had nearly claimed Eleanor's life still formed there after storms, but now a warning sign stood prominently, designed by Lily for her middle school community project and funded by the Eleanor and Hank Turner Coastal Safety Foundation. Do you ever regret it? Hank asked one such evening as they sat watching Lily help the twins build a sandcastle. Regret what? Eleanor asked, leaning against his shoulder, swimming in the wrong spot that day. Eleanor smiled, twining her fingers with his. How could I regret the moment that gave me everything I never knew I wanted? Hank squeezed her hand, the calluses of his carpenter's fingers familiar against her skin. I thought I was just saving a stranger's life. I had no idea I was rescuing my own future. Sometimes, Eleanor murmured, watching their children laugh in the fading sunlight, the most powerful currents are the ones you don't see coming.